global economic slowdown. China, in particular, started slowing down late last year. China being a major driver of growth in the global economy, that's been particularly problematic. Although we have seen the China-U.S. trade war cool somewhat with some preliminary agreements, that could heat back up and could potentially reignite. We've seen the development of new trading venues, particularly in the Asia-Pac region, which has brought some visibility into what were dark markets, and that increased visibility has helped squeeze some of the volatility of those markets, which has also reduced trading margins. We've seen, of course, the environmental trends that have been going on, the regulations driving reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and the impact that that's had in terms of fossil fuels, the development of renewables, and it's even impacting other commodities such as meats, proteins, animal feeds, and biofuel grains such as corn. We've seen the subsidies that have changed the productive or the profile of production, such as renewables otherwise that may not have otherwise been economic with these subsidies. That's helped to drive renewables into a market that otherwise wouldn't have been as accepting financially of those changes. We also see changing demand patterns. Western countries in particular are looking more for green consumer goods, responsible supply chains, such as green power, commodities produced without child labor or deforestation, or funding of conflicts. These are all heightened awareness on the part of consumers that has significantly changed demand patterns. We're also seeing increased regulations and oversight all across the supply chain, particularly around emissions, even things such as shipping fuels with IMO 2020. We're seeing trading regulations and increased stakeholder oversight, particularly around risk management practices. Financiers in particular want to know you're not putting your company at risk, and they're liable to lose money in that. So it's a point of significant issue with them. We're also seeing things even such as U.S. fiscal trade policy impacting commodity prices around the globe, particularly for those commodities that are denominated in U.S. dollars or are impacted by the FX associated with the U.S. dollar. Crude oil has also played a role. All commodities have petroleum products as a key cost of production. So as volatility strikes on the refined product side, it's going to impact the price of those commodities. Moving to the next slide, if we look at the impact of COVID, COVID has exacerbated many of these conditions and changed consumption patterns almost overnight. The global economy slowed to its lowest point in modern history, and demand for numerous commodities have fallen across the board. Recovery is going to take some time, and it's going to be uneven, it's going to be unpredictable, and it's going to be sensitive to additional shocks. Commodity prices, as I noted, fell dramatically, though ag commodities, given the nature of their use, will probably be quicker to recover than some of the other commodities such as metals or even petroleum without OPEC plus support. Consumption has moved from heavily commercial industrial to a lockdown enforced residential based consumption. We saw that with packaged goods, paper products, the famous toilet paper shortages. Energy consumption has declined dramatically. In fact, we've seen demand destruction in many markets. We also saw border closings across Europe and Asia, which affected the flow of commodities. And so now with offices closed, realigning processes to a distributed workforce has exposed communication and collaboration issues. It's stalled many technology projects, implementation projects of new systems, technology improvements. Those have stalled, and it's impacted, in some cases, commercial performance of many of these companies. As I noted earlier, we've also seen stakeholders becoming more and more sensitive and more interested in how companies are managing the myriad of risks in which they're involved. Next slide. Looking specifically at the ag market, we did see significant price impacts of the slowdown. Even though ag and food commodities are generally less sensitive to demand fluctuations, through last week, which is what this chart reflects, and starting when COVID first emerged, composite ag prices were down about 15+% year to date. And we could see additional supply shocks if COVID continues to spread throughout producing regions in the US, Brazil, and other exporting countries that are seeing either a continuing growth in COVID cases or kind of that second wave that's been talked about quite a lot. We could also see a repeat of what happened in some markets in January and February, where some countries begin restricting exports of certain goods and commodities, hoarding them essentially for use within their own borders. Next slide. Unfortunately, all these developments have really exposed weaknesses and shortcomings of the commodity trading risk and commodity management infrastructures that are critical in managing business and maintaining profitability across the commodity complex. Even before the pandemic hit, there was a growing focus on physical commodities and their operational risk. That whole area has increased in importance for many organizations. Supply chain management, asset management, inventory management, predictive maintenance have all been areas of heightened focus for most companies that are in physical commodities. It's now about managing the execution of the deal, the transaction, the contract, and it involves everything from preparing collateral to ensuring that accurate invoicing is taking place. In physical commodities, supply chains, operational risk increases dramatically with the supply chain length and asset complexity. And with globalization, that's certainly occurred over the last decade. We've seen significant recent interest in traceability, managing or optimizing costs and supplier relations across the entirety of the supply chain, and better, faster administration of trades and contracts. We see systems to manage these activities that require comprehensive capabilities like workflow, automation, visualization, and robust audit capabilities as being key. Getting data and information from these systems does require flexibility in reporting, which really in itself is an essential tool in managing operational risks. This information has to be presented accurately and timely in an easily consumable format. And that's becoming a key differentiator for a lot of the CTRM systems and how they provide the information back to the users. Looking again at the impacts of COVID on operational risks, we see that the lockdown has created a need for almost everyone to work from home, and many firms found business continuity to become a significant issue. This change, which happened virtually overnight, has caused many firms to suspend the technical improvement projects, like I mentioned earlier, that could have ultimately helped them deal with these new conditions. For other companies, the impact simply highlighted the need to improve their technical infrastructure, specifically in areas like digitalization, including integrated document management, to improve workflow and support business continuity. We've seen some trying to take advantage of cloud and web delivered systems to ensure that the users had access to those critical systems. COVID has also impacted the access to supplies, commodity supply, creating the need to find alternative sources, adapt supply chain to those new sources, manage FX volatility, manage cash flow, and address price volatility more effectively. Though all ags and sauce firms really have been impacted by the pandemic to one degree or another, we do see that CPG and food and beverage firms have been particularly hit by materials volatility and sourcing issues in areas such as packaging and even in recipe management. Next slide. So in this environment, commodity-centric companies are going to face a number of challenges, and those challenges are driving a number of observable technology and business process trends. First, companies just need to be able to react more rapidly to changing conditions and prioritizing and priorities by digitizing and automating. which ultimately can reduce the overall costs and increase business efficiency. Next, most firms are seeing smaller margins and lower profitability. And again, to reduce costs, many are looking to adapt cloud solutions that can help them become more agile while simultaneously reducing their total cost of ownership. We've seen the ongoing flood of data from both internal and external sources that contain critical business insights has overwhelmed many organizations. This is driving more interest in effectively managing that data via things like data lakes, data analytics, and leveraging big data technologies to not only capture and manage that data, but to really find actionable information within it. As we've previously mentioned, companies need to optimize and improve the performance all along their supply chains, which often requires a move away from large monolithic solutions. Companies are increasingly looking for modularized approaches that can allow them to better align their technology infrastructure to their asset mix and enable them to become more agile. We also see regulators around the world continue to move forward with new rules and requirements, which in turn drives the need for improved regulatory compliance applications and reporting capabilities. As we mentioned several times, we see financiers, stockholders, and other stakeholders becoming more aggressive in their oversight of their businesses and of their risks associated with those businesses, which creates a need to more actively manage risks of all kinds. Next slide. Focusing specifically on risk management and the technologies that are used to manage risk, we see that risk management is no longer simply about reporting a prospective metric like VAR or mark-to-market. It's really about using real-time models and tools, including advanced analytics, to identify and measure risks throughout the breadth of the commercial operations. We've seen the growth and adoption of risk overlay systems that allow companies to acquire sophisticated tools to better manage risk at the enterprise level, including across multiple CTRM systems and business units. We see more focus on the use of sophisticated models that return the results in a more easily consumable way, such as dashboards with rich graphics, including, in some cases, 3D graphics. Spreadsheets do continue to be ubiquitous and an ever-present risk. Cloud solutions and cloud-based apps can certainly help reduce or eliminate that risk. Probably not entirely, as spreadsheets continue to be a trader's best friend. Like I mentioned earlier, the pandemic has highlighted the need to identify and offset all kinds of risks, including political risks, as supply chains are quickly upset by decisions made by politicians and regulatory agencies, noting again the things like border closings or hoarding of materials. These are political and in some cases regulatory decisions that can have significant impacts. And lastly, with increased volatility and operational upset comes increased risk that some firms may not weather the storms that we're facing these days. And as such, credit risk management is back at the forefront, and many companies are looking to improve their credit risk management capabilities. Next slide. If you're on this call, you've probably received the invitation, so you're familiar with the 5 best practices that were in that. Those are listed here again, and I'm not going to necessarily go through them word for word. I do want to focus more on the strategic side of it because I know Colin will look at those 5 best practices in more detail. But again, looking more at the strategic side, the things that you can do to enable those 5 best practices, I think this is where a lot of the investment, a lot of time needs to be spent. You need to look towards leveraging new technologies. Try to move away from the batch-oriented processing that has been part and parcel of this market, the commodity markets for the last 2 decades. and move to more of a real-time environment that can provide you real-time insights to more quickly react. This includes leveraging cloud technologies whenever possible to enable better communication, better distributed workforce management. You also want to expose the data and leverage the data contained within these systems by artificial intelligence tools and machine learning tools, really looking to optimize your asset base and the logistics supply chains. Those are going to be key to managing costs and managing profitability. You want to digitalize wherever possible, eliminate manual processes, spreadsheets, and any manhandling of data. Try to find systems that are going to allow you to have straight through processing, because anytime any individual has to key in data, that's an opportunity to induce errors into your data stream, which could significantly impact your operations or your profitability. And then finally, you want to modularize, move away from the what I call democratized monolithic CTRM, CM systems to a more modular approach that can quickly react to market changes, mixes of assets, changes in strategies as you buy and sell assets, as you develop new trading strategies or move into new markets. You need to be sure you've got the systems that can handle those changes quickly. You want to create a technology infrastructure that meets your exact needs and scales with you, not, again, one of the democratized systems that addresses most of the needs of most of the market. Relying on those large monolithic systems really does constrain your ability to react quickly and develop an agile technology infrastructure. Next slide. The bottom line is here, there is good news. As long-term observers of this market, we do feel that those that can make the investments in quickly transforming their capabilities are going to emerge from this period of significant market upset in a stronger position than that of their peers. To the early mover goes the advantage, and if you have the tools to make those early moves, you're going to outperform that of your peers. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Colin. Colin?
Okay. Thank you, Patrick. This reminds me of a situation, a sugar company, which was composed of multiple entities worldwide, but based in the EU, found themselves related to a previous market disruption. EU sugar market reform, particularly the removal of quotas and tariffs, caused a major disruption and had created a much more volatile and lower margin market, which necessitated global risk management and consolidated hedging across those multiple entities. The client had an incumbent monolithic system, which they'd implemented 2 years earlier, but it was unable to handle derivatives. So the client went to market, issued an RFP, and ECA was chosen. The client implemented ECA's derivatives trading and risk management solution globally, consisting of 10 apps or 10 modules. They were able to capitalize on ECA's platform, especially connectivity and the modular approach that you've referred to, Patrick, to reduce the implementation time, to increase the ROI, and to meet the business imperatives. Rather unusually, the client was also able to retain physical trading in the existing system, at least initially, maximizing the ROI on that investment. And this was really only possible with a modular, flexible platform like ECA's. So to summarize, what are the 5 best practices to ensure you're ready for the next trading disruption? Digitalization and automation of processes to remove latency and errors are important. Automation for performance in liquid, rapidly moving, volatile markets has been essential long before COVID. But automation is also a huge benefit especially during periods of disruption if people are unable to work or adjusting to remote working. Visibility and transparency based on consolidated real-time data and analysis to provide an accurate, up-to-date picture of your trading and risk while events are happening, not days or even weeks later, is also important. You should apply AI and advanced analytics to empower your team to gain deeper insight, to be more efficient and make improved business decisions, providing advantage in fast-moving commodity markets. You should ensure solutions are easy to implement and use remotely and collaboratively. It's not just about technology, it's also about onboarding new users and ensuring you can be up and running efficiently. SaaS-delivered, web-enabled mobile systems are essential, as is effective security based on user or role-defined access, as well as inbuilt collaboration. Users, both inside your organization and across your business network, should be able to access and collaborate, whether they're in the office, at home, in the plant, or out in the field. And solutions should also offer full functional coverage, both now with your immediate requirements, but also with the flexibility to adapt to business or market changes in the future. This involves moving to a modular or app-based approach to give that agility and flexibility. You should avoid monolithic systems, and as Patrick has pointed out, avoid spreadsheets to fill the gaps. Ease of implementation to address immediate pain points without the need to remove all legacy systems can also be important. The best practice can be achieved through one powerful approach for all your needs. It consisting of a single digital, cloud-native and extensible cloud platform with one source of data, one security model and one user experience. In Eka's case, the platform consists of 3 layers: the data layer, the platform layer, and the application layer. The data layer helps integrate all data sources, both internal and external, and combines them to form a unified view. This helps drive the advanced analytics and real-time decision-making. The platform layer has all the architecture components that power the platform and is made up of different parts like workflow, discovery boards for self-service reporting, and robust APIs for development. The application layer has all the applications that sit on top of the platform. Eka's 50+ pre-built apps, along with those apps that can be built by customers themselves and partners, are available on this layer. The applications include numerous trading, risk management, and analytics capabilities, combined with the flexibility of a common UI across devices and support for agriculture, energy, metals mining, financial close, treasury, and risk management. So finally, I'd like to say thank you once again for joining this webinar. I hope you found it interesting and useful. I'd also like again to thank Patrick for joining us and giving us the benefit of his wisdom and insights. And I've just highlighted here 3 ways in which you can start to prepare for the next disruption. We will also be sharing a link for a replay of this webinar, and Eka and Comtech look forward to further discussions with you. Thank you very much for joining.